Yes. It's the hockey version.
Ooh,
It's good.
This is our first pour over that we used a Chemex with.
Yeah, at home.
Ever.
We've had it for a long time.
We've had people who are really, really good at it do it for us. But this is the first time we did it ourselves.
Yes.
It's pretty good. All right, so today's video is gonna be a little bit different than what we're used to. So, we figured in honor of being on the road for a year on the 50 States tour,
Yep.
we would make a 1-year recap. So today we're gonna be recapping the first 14 states of the 50 States tour that we went to in the past year.
Yeah, and so this episode might seem more like podcasty rather than vloggy like we normally do, but I hope that you guys hear our reflections. We haven't visited some of these memories too much other than the videos we've made, but a lot happens obviously that we can't put in the videos, so maybe we'll share some more details.
You might laugh, you might cry, you might find out stuff about us that you didn't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe you didn't want to know. Let's go back before the 50 States tour.
Yes.
And talk about Eureka Springs.
We wanted to travel so much. We'd been married for about a year, and this was right before COVID happened. Nobody saw it coming. And we had made plans for 2020 to do a lot of saving, and towards the end of 2020 and 2021, hopefully take some international trips. And then we all got quarantined. And then we went to Eureka Springs in the summer of 2020 and made our first vlog ever on the road.
So we made it to Eureka Springs. Yeah, we knew that we wanted to start vlogging, we wanted to start making videos to like capture our experience and like, you know, so we could look back on our travels. And so Eureka Springs was kind of the first vlog that we made. And it was kind of interesting because our Eureka Springs 1 video, at the time of filming this video, has over 8,000 views.
Yes.
And
it is one of the worst vlogs that we have made.
Yeah. We were just like, oh, this is so cool. Like literally you can throw together a video and it's just gonna do really well on YouTube.
It was nuts. I remember we posted it on a Saturday night, really pretty late. And we went to bed, it was like almost midnight, and we woke up and it had over 200 views, which we thought was crazy because we had like 13 subscribers.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
We were really excited, but we didn't know at the time how good that was.
Yeah, and how that would not happen again.
Yeah, and here we are over 50 videos later, and like some videos we posted months ago and they still have less than 200 views.
That's true. The only other video I think that's done that well right off the bat was our van announcement video.
We bought a van.
Yeah, we did.
That brought us, of course, fast forward to August of 2020 when we officially decided that we wanted to tent camp in all 50 states. We're gonna tent camp in all 50 states.
All 50 of them. Yeah, and we get asked a lot, how did we decide to do that? And basically, after Eureka Springs, we had so much fun making those videos, and we still had the desire to travel, but we need to stay stateside, at least for the time being because of COVID. We were like, okay, let's just go ahead and knock all 50 states off. Like, we wanted to do that anyway. We thought we would do it after we traveled internationally more, but we were like, obviously, now's the time. So we wanted to have something that we did in every single state. And TJ's a runner, and so he was like, maybe I should run a 5K in every state.
So I'm going to run a 5K in every state.
But then we were like, you know, camping, #1 at the time, was the only way we would probably be able to afford doing all 50 states in a reasonable amount of time.
So what'd we do? We went down to the nearest camper dealership and picked out a big 5th wheel camper.
Yeah, thought we would just buy this camper, this one-time purchase, and like that would be our lodging for forever and ever, and we would pull it to at least 49 states.
I'm so glad we didn't do that.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing against those of you who do pull campers or drive big RVs and do your thing. There's some places that we've been that we absolutely love that we would have no way been able to get a camper in there at all. So fast forward a little bit more, we decide that we want to tent camp in all 50 states.
Yeah.
I've camped before, she's camped before. We love tent camping, so it just made sense for us to do it. And plus it was the least expensive option.
And we already had half of the gear.
Yeah.
We had multiple tents. And this is the crazy thing. After we decided to do this and we were like making a list of all of the equipment we were gonna need, and we were making a list of what we had and the stuff we still needed to buy, we realized we didn't register, I don't think, for any camping gear when we got married, but we were given 3 tents?
Yeah, 3 tents.
3 tents, a double sleeping bag, and like the grill supplies that we use still to this day.
So if you're watching this video and you gave us that stuff, you helped contribute to all of this right here.
So we were driving around one Sunday afternoon and we were like, we really need to decide or we're just gonna talk about this forever. And if we don't commit to it, we'll never actually do it and it'll just be a dream. And so we decided this is for real, like we wanna do this. And I mean, the next day, actually maybe that night, we went and we finished buying the gear that we didn't have. And we left 2 weeks later.
Yes, on a surprise birthday trip for Mary Catherine, we went to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And that's when the 50 States journey began officially. Yeah. We have officially gone mile 1 on our 50 States tour. We are headed to our first state, Tennessee. Woohoo! And we are 1 mile in.
And I remember like being on that trip thinking, this could make it or break it. Like we might decide we will never do this again. And it was the most fun weekend.
Yeah. We, night 1 started off, of course, it was her birthday, so we stayed in a camping cabin at a KOA. It was our first KOA experience.
It was. And we got there really late, and so we were like, for our first night, let's not set up a tent. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah. And the KOA camping cabin was kind of cool, but that's when we discovered that KOAs are right next to the highway or interstate.
I can also see the interstate.
I think our expectations were set a little too high, and then we made that video of reviewing the KOA that dragged on for like 5 or 6 minutes. It's the longest talking head, I guess besides this, that we've ever done.
But also that video's done well now, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think it's also important to say that like in starting all of this, not once did we do it for any reason to become YouTube influencers or YouTube famous or anything like that. And
that still might not happen. We're not there. That might not ever happen.
Yeah.
But I'm having the time of my life.
Yeah. Moving on, we left the camping cabin. I just remember waking up in the middle of the night and like hearing semis go by and just like thinking we probably are never gonna do this again. But we moved on, and I remember we were headed towards Nashville, and we waited in traffic forever because there was a wreck. All right, we've been sitting here with the car off for an hour, and we are now starting to move. See, the traffic is back way, way, way up. Went through Nashville and then got to Newport and stayed at another KOA where I had reserved like a primitive campsite, but when we got there, we realized that there was like a yurt set up in our campsite.
But it has a tent already on it. TJ's about to go in it to see if it's ours. It's empty? Is that our tent?
I guess.
Guess we're not setting up our tent.
And so we just stayed in the yurt for the first night, which was kind of cool because we, again, didn't have to set up our tent. But by that time I was like, we're supposed to tent camp in Tennessee, and I don't know if camping in a yurt is necessarily tent camping. And so I was a little bummed, but a little bit like excited.
And then the next night we actually camped in at the Smoky Mountain National Park at the Elk Mont Campground. And
which we did not reserve. I don't know if I can admit that on the camera.
Oh, that's true.
But
okay, this is what happened. We could not get a campsite because it was booked up way ahead of time. We drove through the campground during the day and there were several spots open, and then we drove through after hours before dinner. Spots were still open, but there were keys that had not been picked up. And then we drove through at 11:30 p.m. We picked a site that didn't have a key, which either meant that the person had just left, they reserved it, but they'd already left early, so they weren't coming back, or it was available. We didn't take anyone's site.
That we knew of.
Yeah.
If we took your site, we're really sorry.
So if you drove in like after midnight, sorry
Which we
about that.
thought people wouldn't do. We were like, it's after midnight. Like, people aren't gonna come in here and set up. Little did we know, that would be us for the next like several states.
Oh
We'd be
my
rolling
gosh.
in after midnight to almost every campground that
Yeah.
we've been to, setting up. So now we know that
We'll do
it's
that.
probably not a good idea to do that, but it was our first time. And like I said, this whole thing's a learning experience.
Right.
But
I don't recommend rolling into a campsite and just taking one when you don't have a reservation, even if it's after hours or really late. That probably wasn't the right thing to do. It's cool to say we camped in that campground, but
Now you know what really happened.
we haven't done it again since. And we won't do it again.
So I remember like waking up the next morning, there was like an elk or something
Something was
making noise, and it was really early. It was before sunrise, so it was pitch black dark, and we packed the tent down, which was also the first time that we set up and packed down in the dark. Which we thought, man, we're never gonna do this again. But again, have done it ever.
It's like all we ever do.
Yeah, we always set up in the dark.
Like the number of times that you have seen in our vlogs, the tent being set up or taken down in the daylight, that's the only times that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Every other time it's been in the dark.
So we drove over to the lookout over Gatlinburg and watched the sunrise. I remember it was really cold, but it was really, really neat. Everything in me is just like...
That was the trip also when we visited Klingman's Dome the day before. That
Yes.
guy was flying his drone off of Klingman's Dome.
Over people in a national park.
Yeah.
Which you can't do, that's illegal.
Right.
So we started to head home after that, and I remember riding in the car thinking like, this was the coolest thing. Like, we are literally gonna get to do this in 49 more states. And then we got to that place,
Just outside of Nashville.
that mall that was kind of creepy. There was no one there.
But it looks so abandoned.
That's
Like,
kind of creepy. It's like kind of a scary movie. I remember getting home and like there was so much footage to go through,
oh my gosh.
but I was really excited about it because I was like, this is the state #1, you know? And what's cool is we actually filmed our announcement video. And we have a huge announcement for you guys. Starting our next adventure, we are gonna go to all 50 states. And we released that like right when we got home, and then edited the other vlog. People thought we were crazy. They still think we're crazy.
The title of that video is like, we have a big announcement, something like that. And people thought we were announcing that we were pregnant.
Yeah, we got so much hate on that.
And we were like, we're tent camping in all 50 states. And they're like, that's really cool too, I guess. I'm like, yeah, it is.
There's a guy over there who's doing yard work. He's using a blower, so we might stop for a second. Hopefully you can still hear us okay.
Yeah, so now that we have kind of talked about the first state, that was like a trial run, and how we got into this, let's briefly recap the other 13 states we have camped in this year.
So, after we got back, we were addicted.
Yeah.
And instantly. And so we made a rule that we would have the next state travel planned before we got home.
Which we have kept that until the last state.
Yeah. Only because we're in the middle of a van build, and we're not sure exactly when it's gonna be done.
There's a lot of factors up in the air, and so we can't exactly plan it.
Yeah.
But when we got home from Tennessee, we were like, okay, Arkansas is next. That's our home state, and we already camped pretty often in the fall in Arkansas, and so we were like, all right, Arkansas is next. So 2 weeks after we got back from Tennessee, we camped in Arkansas.
High points was we stayed in one of our favorite campgrounds, and
it's still one of our favorite campgrounds.
And we camped with my parents.
We made like real good food. And,
yes.
Just enjoyed good company. That was fun.
And then we got to go on a cool hike and a bike ride, but that was also the low point.
Yeah, it was.
I remember I didn't know exactly how far it was from Maumelle to the pinnacle, and I calculated it in the maps, but it like did a straight line instead of like going around to the parking lot where we
like
had
on the road that we had to take.
And so like it told me it was like a couple miles.
Yeah.
And we ended up riding like what, 5?
It was 5 miles one way, and it was very, very hilly. How far is it?
2.5 miles, I think.
So that was frustrating, and I got so upset. I had been working out that week really hard, and I was so sore already, and then TJ just took off without me up these hills.
We may have had a big argument.
So that's why it's just a B-roll sequence.
Yeah, no talking head sequences during that.
During that part of that video. But once we got partway up the mountain, I was over it once we were hiking. And
it turned out really good.
The ride back was awesome. I knew what I was expecting, and I had a lot of fun. I could have done it all over again. And then we felt bad because we didn't really work our way around Arkansas, and especially as we started to get into other states, we realized Arkansas is a wonderful, like, there's a reason it's called the natural state. It is the best to be camping, to do outdoor activities, like there's endless possibilities, and we did not feel like we showed that off very well.
Which is why you'll be seeing more Arkansas content as we move forward.
Yes. 2 weeks after that, we planned to go to Oklahoma, and we unexpectedly got like 2 nights added to our trip. So we also went up to Kansas.
And Kansas was so interesting because it was the first time we ever used the app HipCamp.
And if you are not familiar with HipCamp, it is like Airbnb for camping. So you can rent people like parts of their land or parts of the property that they own. Some of them live on it, some of them don't. We've used HipCamp several times since then because it was great, but
we didn't know what we were getting into, so we were a little sketch about it.
We found a guy in Wilson, Kansas who owns a decommissioned missile silo, and it sounds really cool to stay there, but we don't just get to stay there. He is going to give us a tour of this silo, and he's building a house in it for himself, so he knows it pretty well, and then we get to camp on his property.
You know, like, is this legit? How far do they go into the background investigations of these people? And this is why.
I legit messaged like influencers on Instagram, hoping they would message me back. People that like have camping YouTube channels and Instagrams, to be like, have you ever used this? I remember Heath and Alyssa, I don't know if you guys know who they are, but they RV'd in all 50 states. So I asked them, and they were so kind. They were like, we've heard it's reputable, but we really don't know.
I mean, once in a lifetime opportunity, right?
I mean, it's like equally terrifying and exciting at the same time.
We also don't know anybody personally who's used HipCamp.
That's true.
So that's gonna be an adventure too.
Yeah, so we booked to stay on the grounds of this abandoned missile silo in the middle of Kansas. And I remember like going there, and we were getting closer, and it was like we got off the interstate onto a dirt road, and then like we got off, or an asphalt road, and then we got off the asphalt road onto a dirt road, and it was just kind of like we were getting further and further away from like people who would like help us if something went wrong.
Yeah.
And then we pulled up onto this private land, and this dude walks up, and he's wearing this huge knife on his belt, and I'm just like,
one of 2 things. We had already said this is very much, if this went wrong, it's very much like a Dateline episode. We went to camp at this place that was on the internet with a stranger in a missile silo, and we're going to die. Or it's gonna be a really, really cool thing. But when we showed up and we thought, yes, this is legit our time to go, or maybe we need a weapon too, like, because then I started worrying about like, what do we not know about this area? Like, what kind of animals are out here? What do I need to be concerned about?
Neither one of us are armed or have any weapons, but we meet Matthew, who's the host. Totally cool guy. He took us on the missile silo tour, which was incredible in itself, and we got to pick our own camp spot on his land. We had a fire that night, got to talk with a lot of the other people who camped at the missile silo with us, and after that I was just like, this is what we're made to do. We're made to travel, and we're made to experience this country and the things that make up this country.
It was like, okay, we're not just going to a tourist city anymore. Like, we got out here, we literally went under the ground in this missile silo. Like, oh, it was the coolest experience.
Yeah. Then we went
to Oklahoma.
Yeah, went to Oklahoma.
And before we move on with that, I think we need to move.
Okay.
I think there's about to be a birthday party.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Don't want to ruin the party.
Yes. We'll find somewhere else to sit.
Alright. Alright, there was a birthday party at that pavilion, so...
We moved.
Yeah, we moved here to this amphitheater. So, after we left Kansas, we went into Oklahoma, and this was the first time on a trip that we did 2 states at one time. And Oklahoma was an interesting place.
Yeah, it was. First of all, Salt Plains.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Absolutely beautiful. If you haven't been, put it on your list.
They're out of the way, and you'll be like, is this worth it? It's 1000% worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the campground next to the Salt Plains, never stay there.
No. Those were the dirtiest campground bathrooms I've ever seen. I don't know the last time that anybody like took care of them.
These bathrooms are nasty. But I'm using the bathroom. Mary Catherine comes in. She's like, TJ, there's a frog in the toilet. And I'm thinking like there's a dead frog. No, check this out. That sucker's alive. He's just waiting for you to sit down, and he's gonna get you.
And then the storms were rolling in.
Yeah.
And so we had to sleep in the car in a field so that a tree branch wouldn't fall on us.
It was a very miserable experience.
I remember the next day we got into Oklahoma City and we went to the Oklahoma City Memorial.
Absolutely cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Which we actually, my dad asked us this the other day, just about like how filming changes the experience of visiting places. And that was the first time I remember thinking like, we won't be able to do this justice, first of all, because even though we can show you how pretty the memorial is, there's nothing like the feeling of actually visiting somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And again, you know, we visited a historical place in Kansas, and then visiting another historical place, it was just like, this is getting to know America. And it was sad, but it was also like a very patriotic feeling of recognizing those that helped and put all the effort into remembering what actually happened. Like there was like pressure, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
To do this video right. I don't know that we did it, but we tried. And that was a really great experience. And then we went to a different campground.
Yes, which was much, much better. Not even comparable.
I give those bathrooms a first-class rating. Probably is the best bathroom that I've ever experienced while camping.
So by then we decided that our next state was going to be Texas.
Yeah, we were getting pretty close to the Thanksgiving time. At the time I was a teacher, and so we were kind of working around breaks and that sort of thing.
And Texas is so big that like we wanted to be sure that we covered every little region that we could, and so we decided that it would be cool to do one giant loop around Texas, starting in Dallas, going down to San Antonio, going over to Big Bend, going up to El Paso, then Amarillo, then back to Dallas again.
Yeah, so before our Texas trip, we had kind of admitted that we realized we would not be able to do everything in every state. There was always gonna be things that we wanted to do when we revisited that state. However, after making that giant loop around Texas, I realized if at all possible, we need to try to see as much of a state as possible when we visit that state, because Texas, for example, is incredibly different from one side to the other, and even from Amarillo to El Paso. So I'm really thankful we got to see that.
It was in that state that I realized that there's no way we're gonna be able to experience everything, and that we need to just pick something that would be fun and interesting and give us a taste of the state. But at the same time, like, there will always be stuff that we don't do, but there will also be opportunity to go back and do those things if we really decided we wanted to.
Yes, and I think I realized on that trip like we got to spend less time at Big Bend National Park than I had originally thought we would. I was disappointed at first, but I realized that experiencing things for a short amount of time is better than not at all. Yeah. And so I was really thankful that.
One thing that I wish we could have done differently on that trip, and it wasn't any of our fault, was we had picked this incredible campground outside of Big Bend National Park called Coyote Crossing.
The guy was so nice. Go stay there if you have an RV.
Yes, and we like got everything set up. The landscape was absolutely beautiful, and then a sandstorm came in, and so we couldn't stay there and had to drive hours to the next place.
I don't know what we're gonna do after we eat dinner, but I have a feeling we're not setting up a tent here.
And like right now, there's sand everywhere. It's all over me, it's in my ears, my mouth.
It's all over the steering wheel.
Yeah, it's all over the steering wheel. It's all over our camping gear. It's all over our burgers that we just made.
And it took weeks to get the sand out of our car.
Yeah. Like the tripod that the camera's on right now, just like it has never functioned the same since that trip because of all the sand that's stuck in it.
So that was crazy, and then it was nuts because we had to drive all the way to Van Horn in the pitch black dark late at night, and we didn't have cell service.
You saw that bear.
There was a bear. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the craziest thing. And so I didn't know there were bears in South Texas, and people since then have told me like other animals it could have been, but I've watched some videos of people in Big Bend National Park that saw what I saw. It was running at the car, and like TJ never saw it because I just froze. I was speechless. It was running straight at the car. We were driving this way, and it got, I mean, it was like, oh, it was so close to us. And just a little bit up the road, I saw what I think was some baby bears. It scared the mess out of me, this giant black thing just running out of the dark towards us.
Then we discovered one of our most favorite campgrounds of all time.
That was the coldest night of camping we had ever experienced to that point. The wind chill was like low 20.
It was Palo Duro Canyon State Park. Yeah, I remember like it was so cold, and I slept really, really well. It was so cold making dinner, and I just remember like, man, I'm having so much fun.
It was 6 days before December, and our goal was, we wanted to have 100 subscribers by December.
Yes.
And we hit 100 that night.
Yeah, sitting in the car, like getting ready for bed.
And we just checked our YouTube channel, and we have 101 subscribers. And our goal was to hit 100 by the end of this month. And so not only did we surpass that goal, but we also hit triple digits.
And we did it 6 days before our deadline. And then we grew a lot in December, and that was just cool to see people's support and that sort of thing. And then on the way home, we did not go I-40 from Amarillo into Little Rock. We wanted to go through Dallas just to stay in Texas, and we hadn't really spent time in Dallas on this trip. And we found the most random donut shop, and we have since stopped there again.
Yes, probably America's best donut.
Yeah, Clarendon's Donuts in Clarendon, Texas. It's about an hour from Amarillo. Well worth getting off I-40.
It's probably one of the best apple fritters I've ever had.
This is one of the better ones that I've had.
Yes, and we stopped there again, like later in the 50 States tour, like routed ourselves so that we would go through Clarendon, which is not like on the way to anything.
Right.
But, and then ate again at Clarendon's Donuts. Was good.
Yeah.
So, leaving Texas, we then planned our next trip, which was absolutely one of my favorites, has the most special place in my heart.
Really?
And that's Florida.
Aw, that is so sweet. Has a special place in your heart.
Yeah, it does, right there.
Aw, I didn't know that. I knew you loved it.
I really loved the beach, and like it was at the time the closest thing that we had done since our honeymoon to our honeymoon. And that was like,
We're all so close to the train.
Yeah, we'll wait for that to pass. So yeah, and it was just warm, like it was cold at home and it was warm, and it took us forever to get down to Key West, but I just remember like opening the door and like setting our tent up that night. It was warm and like you could hear the ocean, and it was just so nice, and we had a really good time.
We did. Now, here's something you might not know about the Florida trip. We didn't plan this one as well as we should have camping-wise.
Nope.
And this was the trip that we realized, wow, we got to do a better job at like planning our campgrounds ahead of time because they're all packed full and they're not all open, even though the internet says they are.
Yeah.
So we've had to start like calling places to make sure they are, because we left Little Rock after a wedding at 5 p.m. on a Saturday and drove to Pensacola. We probably could have gone to bed about 1 or 2 a.m., which is late, but we were planning on doing that in a campground that I found. It was free camping, but when we got there, it was closed because they still hadn't rebuilt it from hurricane damage.
So we pulled into a rest stop and slept in our car.
4 hours.
Slept in the car.
I slept great, actually.
I did not.
Then we drove to Key West the next day.
Yes, it was all day to get there. And then we had conch fritters, which we very naively pronounce conch. That's what a conch looks like. Some nice person corrected us in the comments. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So it's called conch fritters.
Yes. And we haven't eaten too many foods that are very local, but those were very local to Southern Florida, and they were great. That doesn't taste like what I thought it would taste like, but it's good.
And we had our third KOA experience.
Once we got up to Georgia.
That was probably one of my favorites of the KOAs.
That was also crazy because we were down in Key West and it was like 80 degrees, and then we stayed the night in the Everglades National Park, which... And this is the most like freaked out I've ever been camping, because it's the Everglades, and this is the one place I said I would never camp. Go watch the Florida video for that recap. But the next day when we got up to the Atlanta area and stayed in that KOA, it was 32 degrees.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
And then we went to the Georgia Aquarium, which was awesome.
I know, and that video has not performed well. I guess the internet doesn't like it. But that was one of my favorite things we've done.
I remember editing that video and thinking, like, this is gonna be so cool. Like, people are gonna love this video. Like, I love this video. And then it just hasn't done well. So it's just crazy how that works.
And the night after that, we found a free camping on the Dirt. If you're not familiar with that, it's DYRT. And you can look up campgrounds of all different prices, places that are primitive or places that include lots of nice amenities. You can just filter it by all those sorts of things, and we often use it to find free camping. And we found this in North Georgia, pretty close to where the Appalachian Trail starts. We did not realize that it was so far out of cell phone range. We scared our parents. We were driving and driving. We probably drove for an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah. Without
cell service before we got to the campground. And so we didn't realize that was gonna happen, and so they didn't hear from us for a long time. And once we got to this place, we couldn't find what the pictures looked like on the Dirt. There was another person or two camping, but we were so confused.
Yeah, so
it was so weird.
We eventually found the place, not the place on the Dirt, but we found a place that was designated for a tent site.
Rule number 1, always scout out your camping location.
That's right, and never turn the car off. And I forgot the grate for the cook stove.
So, sandwiches it is. We were driving, I was north of Georgia, the next day was Christmas Eve, and we had things to do, like celebrations with TJ's family that night, so we already knew we were gonna get up really early that day, like on Christmas Eve, like really early. So we just went to bed with the sun.
It is like 6:45 p.m. but we're waking up at 3:45, so we're going to bed right now so that we can get some sleep before we have to drive home to Arkansas tomorrow.
And we didn't sleep very well because it was raining, and there was like a tree that kept creaking near our tent, and the wind picked up so bad. And I just remember, like, I have to stay awake because this tree could fall over and it could fall on us and it could come through our tent, or maybe there's something out there like pushing it, like a bear, or, you know, I didn't know what it was, so I didn't sleep very well. And then at like 3 in the morning,
we both woke up. Well, I guess the wind blew, the cell service somehow picked up.
Yeah.
And we both started getting texts, and like I had like lots of texts from my dad. I was like, I'm sure you're fine, but like just let me know when you are. Like when we're traveling, they have our location so they can see where we are. And he's like, I can't see where you are, so obviously you don't have cell service, but like let us know you're fine.
Yeah.
I had so many, and that woke me up, but I'm glad it did, because then it started raining harder.
We just looked at each other and we're like, we're not going back to sleep. Let's just get on the road.
And it's pouring down rain, so we're gonna have to pack up in the rain.
And we got packed up. All our stuff was wet because it was pouring down rain. And then me and Catherine, like a trooper, drove us all the way into Nashville.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever driven through rain like that. And also, I get very car sick easily. Usually when I drive, it's not that bad, but I had nothing in my stomach. I hadn't gone to the bathroom in like 12 hours because we didn't have our compost toilet yet. We're out in the woods. I just couldn't go. And I got so car sick. That was probably the only day that I was like incredibly miserable. We're winding through all these roads to get back out to the town. Finally, we get into cell service. I got some food in my stomach and got to go to the bathroom, and I was fine. But then the rain driving in through Chattanooga up to Nashville was nuts. And then we get there, TJ slept the whole time because he hadn't slept all night.
Yeah.
And so we switched drivers, and both of us at that point felt great. I'd slept pretty well that night, and he slept up to that point, even though we'd been up since 3 a.m. And it was sunshiny the whole way home.
Yeah, it was great.
TJ got to drive in the sunshine.
It was perfect.
That was just the weirdest day.
Yeah, that brought us home. We did Christmas with family, and then we planned...
That closed out 2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, we planned our first trip of 2021, which was to Alabama.
Yes, and let me tell you, Alabama is the first time that I was just blown away with how much the state had to offer.
Yeah.
I don't think any state had shocked me at that point with like the number of things, historical things, or just things to do or whatever. I was impressed with what there was to do, but Alabama blew me away with like everything there was to do from North Alabama all the way to the coast, and we lived it up that weekend.
Yeah.
We did.
I remember going to the lost luggage place, which was really cool just to see all the things that people lose when they fly on the airline. And then
we talked to this guy that worked for NASA for years.
Yes.
Oh, that was so cool. We learned about rockets from him.
And then we had another planning fail, and we didn't have a tent site for the next night, so we stayed in a hotel, which was probably good for us because we weren't.
Because the next day we got up, and I really wasn't feeling well.
So we got up and we went down and did the Battleship Memorial Park, which was the coolest thing, and we got
another piece of history we experienced.
We had to rush through it, but I'm glad we did it because it was really, really neat.
And I lost the camera batteries and the SD cards on the ship.
The SD cards had contained everything that we had filmed on the trip thus far.
Yeah.
And I remember we stopped for a second to do something in this one room, and then we got up and like did like 75% of the ship tour.
Yeah.
And then it was time to go.
And we were like rushing through the end of it because it was about to close, but we still had so much we wanted to do, and I was like, I don't have the bag.
We're literally speed walking to get off the ship. The last one's on here, and they close at 5. It's 4:58. We just realized that we left our little bag of camera batteries laying somewhere, and so we're backtracking to see if we can find where it is.
I had a moment of just like, we're gonna have to go through everything that we just went through and go room by room on this massive battleship.
They're closing in 5 minutes.
And try to find this thing.
And it's one thing, like if I just lost batteries, you can buy new batteries, but it had one SD card that we'd already filmed the other things in for the state.
Yeah.
We filled that one up, so we'd started a new one. It was scary. We found it.
Yeah, we found it, thankfully.
Never been so relieved. That was not fun. That was crazy. And then we camped that night. Actually, we went right over the border into Florida because there was a free campsite, and I had no idea that it was called Rattlesnake Lake.
Yes.
The name of the lake that we're camping on is Rattlesnake Lake. Mary Catherine doesn't know this yet. She's in the bathroom, and I haven't told her yet. because I knew she would freak out.
It was good camping though.
It was good camping.
And then we went to Bamahenge, which was one of those things that's like truly unique.
Yeah.
We had no idea that it was in
and
existence.
I didn't believe the map. The map took us and it was like, all right, the destination is on your right. And I was like, what?
Looking at the woods,
like,
no, it's not either. But there was this little parking lot. So we pulled in the parking lot and then we saw a glimpse of it. And we were both like, what?
Oh my gosh.
What?
What in the world? It's literally like out of a storybook.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. By that time, I was feeling so bad and we thought I had COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to ride all the way home, 8 hours. And I called and the doctor's office was closed that day because of the holiday.
You got tested and we waited forever for the results, but it turns out she didn't have COVID.
I didn't have COVID, but they lost my results. That's why it took forever to come back. And anyway, but they had given me antibiotics. By the time the results came back, I felt like a brand new person, so.
And then we planned our next trip, which was to Mississippi.
And we'd planned it for February and we were so excited. And then like the whole country got snowed in February.
Yeah.
we didn't go anywhere. Yeah, so as soon as that was over, we kicked March off by going to Mississippi. And that was an interesting experience because there's just not a lot to do in Mississippi, honestly. The people are nice.
I really enjoyed what we did, though.
Yeah, we like went to the original like Coca-Cola place and we visited another national park.
We got to see our friends who let us camp in their backyard.
Some of our very best friends.
Yes.
And we went to the gas station next to their house the next morning to get gas before we headed out. And these people in the gas station were like, oh my gosh, do you guys film YouTube videos? They were like freaking out.
Yeah, they like made us feel famous. Yeah. And we're like, we're nobodies.
We're nobody.
But this is cool.
But this is great. They're like, we're gonna look you up and watch all your videos. so
if you looked us, if you looked us up and watched all our videos, thank you.
Yeah, that was really fun. It was really kind for them to be like that. And we headed home by way of Memphis. And at this point, we had camped in 9 states. And we had been using our Walmart tent, which we absolutely loved, but it had a bunch of holes in the zippers.
That was the last time we used it.
Yeah, it was, man, it was on its way out. It served us well for such a long time. And that's when we got the REI Base Camp 4.
Yes, that tent changed our life.
It did, and I'm so thankful we got it at that point in the 50 States Tour because the next trip was when we headed out to the Grand Canyon. And we camped in some extreme weather.
Yes.
TJ went to get another battery because this one's about to die, but we're also across the street from the high school, the local high school, and they must be having band rehearsal, marching rehearsal today because now we can hear the metronome. So if this video just sounds a little funny, sorry, we did our best. So sorry about like all the different noises, the metronome, the kids, the lawnmower, nature, you know, outside.
All right, so New Mexico and Arizona.
Wow, what an experience. First of all, if you've watched those videos, you know that we camped in Arizona or New Mexico on our Texas loop.
On the side of the highway.
Yeah, awesome campground.
Yes.
Highly recommend. But we actually didn't do anything in New Mexico. And so when we were driving to Arizona, we did things in New Mexico, but we didn't actually camp. So the New Mexico experience is kind of split up. But White Sands National Park, you guys, wow.
Beautiful.
Bit out of the way.
Yes. It's on like one of the must-go lists though.
Absolutely. And before you go, you should look up like the things to do, like take a sled or a sled disc so you can ride down the dunes.
Yeah.
We didn't do that. Wish we would have.
We watched other people do it.
Yeah. It was amazing. They have such great picnic areas set up. Like, it's just so different from everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. After that, we drove through Las Cruces and went to 2 different Whataburgers to try to get dinner. Both of them were out of almost everything.
They're out of all their sides. They're out of pickles. They're out of onions. They're out of shakes. They're out of Diet Dr. Pepper.
The Sprite is like not mixed right, so they're gonna like change the mix and bring another one.
Yeah.
That was weird. So weird. But we drove over into Arizona that night and we camped at another free spot we found on the dirt.
It's called Indian Bread Rocks.
Yes.
And again, came in and set up at night and then didn't realize the beauty of where we were staying until the sun came up the next morning.
Oh my gosh, it was just gorgeous. And a lot of the free BLM sites don't have bathrooms, but that one did. Oh man, it was just incredible.
And just when we thought it couldn't get any better, we got to our hip camp near the Grand Canyon.
Which was the second hip camp that we had booked. So I realized I booked us a hip camp near the Grand Canyon and I hadn't heard anything from the owner. It had been a few days, I messaged them, they hadn't messaged me back, and I was like, that's a little odd. Well, then we stopped in Scottsdale, Arizona for a little while on the way up there, and I started reading the reviews on that one, and everybody had had that experience. The guy would never message them back. Sometimes he would be there, sometimes he wouldn't. People would show up and just be like, no one's here. Like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Like, I'm terribly confused. And I realized at that point, this place may or may not exist. And by the time we get there.
Which was perfect because that experience led to us booking a different place, and the second place, M&M Little Oasis in Arizona.
Oh my gosh.
One of our favorite hip camps. Our host was absolutely brilliant. All right, we just met our hip camp host, Mike, and they were voted the 3rd best hip camp in Arizona in 2019, and now we know why. First of all, he brings a case of beer up and hands me a beer, and
he was like, welcome, and told us all about his land and how we got it, the different campsites. He was so kind. Him and he had a couple of workers.
And we told him about our other experience, and he like offered to like refund us out of his own money because he wanted us to have a good experience. And we were like,
absolutely not. We want you to make money.
Yeah, we want you to get the money. We'll deal with hip camp on the other thing.
Which hip camp was awesome, by the way. It was just that one host that, hip camp was great. And we got our money back. But he was so kind, and he told us, he was like, I mean, I'll even give you a discount if you will just recommend me in your videos. And we were like, we're gonna recommend you anyway. Like, we want you to.
We don't need a discount. Just,
It was just really great. And he actually knew of that other guy, and he'd had some campers that were just like us ended up at his place because of that other guy.
It's absolutely beautiful, and we're setting up our tent, just pumped about the Grand Canyon. And then we wake up and go to the Grand Canyon the next morning, and you can't see anything.
This is the lookout, and it just drops off forever. You can't see anything.
But you can't see anything.
It's just white. The white abyss.
10% chance of snow, and there was 5 inches of snow by the end of the day. We couldn't see a single thing in the Grand Canyon. We only had 2 full days planned there, and so we thought, you know, a hike might still be fun. And the park rangers were like, nobody needs to hike today. It's gonna be too dangerous with the weather. You can't see. You could slip on the ice. It was, oh my gosh. And nobody was dressed for it because nobody, like, planning ahead. We got a lot of mean comments about that video. People were like, just watch the weather to plan your trips.
Oh, we watched the weather.
Yes, we did. And everybody at the Grand Canyon was talking to each other about how nobody packed for that weather because that was not predicted.
All of like the cold weather items were sold out at every store because even like the park rangers were surprised. So that was very odd. And then we almost considered driving either to Vegas or even out to LA just to get some kind of experience out of it, because we talked to some park rangers and they're like, I mean, looking at tomorrow's weather, it's kind of a 50-50 shot. It looks like it's gonna be better, but we really don't know if the clouds are gonna be, like, if they're below and in the canyon, like, you're still not gonna be able to see anything. We don't know if they're gonna be above it or not. So that night we went back to our tent, we took a nap, and then we both woke up and we were like, we don't want anything cold. All we had brought is cold stuff to eat, and it was freezing cold and it was snowing, and we were like, let's just drive into the nearest town and first of all look for warm clothes, but also let's eat something warm. And so that brought us to McDonald's, and I remember sitting in the car, like, we must have been really miserable because
we must have been.
We sat in the car, we were just both like, this is so
this McDonald's is so good. Which I've eaten breakfast at McDonald's several times, but I don't even know the last time I had like another meal from McDonald's.
Yeah, it had at least been 10 years for me.
And it was the best McDonald's I've ever had. And check out these cups. They're clear.
And then we drove back in a blizzard.
Oh my gosh, the snow started coming down even harder and it was terrifying. And we're from Arkansas, okay? We don't drive in the snow. And
there were cars like going off the road every now and then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But we got back and we went to sleep and woke up the next morning. I just remember thinking like, man,
if we can't see the Grand Canyon today, I'm gonna be so disappointed.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna drive, we're just gonna start driving home and hopefully do some things on the way home. Cause man, we came out here for nothing, but we walked over the little hill to the lookout. Oh my gosh, I teared up.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like that in my life.
No, like there's a reason. It's one of the wonders of the world. Man, I've just teared up thinking about it.
Right now.
It was just like, we've seen some incredible things and some really beautiful things, but there's nothing like that. And we'd seen Palo Duro Canyon, which is the second largest canyon in North America, obviously behind the Grand Canyon, and so
it doesn't even compare.
Man.
And that hike we did, the South Kaibab Trail, was absolutely beautiful. Our favorite hike to that date. Like, I would go back and do it. I would want to go back. If I ever did it again, I'd want to go back, hike all the way down, spend the night in the town by the river, and then hike back the next day.
We got to the point where we could see the river and hear it, and that was really, really cool. We got to talk to a guy. He was on his way up and we were going down, who had spent a few nights down there. He was coming up because of the weather. Because then there was more weather rolling in afterwards. We literally got the one day that week that it was good. But man, just that experience. And then the people that are out there doing a hike like that, they're not your average hikers, I guess you'd say.
It's a pretty tough hike.
It is tough. And the steepness of it is tough. The fact that you go down first and you have to come up next is tough. For us, the elevation was tough because we live at 400 feet and we started at over 7,000. The temperature changes because of that. I mean, we were wearing lots of layers at the top and we'd shed a bunch of those layers when we got to where we were stopping.
At the very end of the trail, we had decided that we were gonna walk back because the buses weren't running.
Yeah. This is so much cooler than the rest of us. He's not even wearing a helmet. Oh, people. Okay. So yeah.
The buses.
The buses were not running at full capacity first. They couldn't max out all the seats like they used to because COVID.
All right, so we got to the bus stop and the line was super long because they're only letting like 4 people on the bus at a time. So it would have taken us like an hour and a half to wait in line. So we decided to take the rim trail to the next bus stop.
And so we hiked a half mile, and by that time our legs were killing us. And so we wait at the bus stop. One bus comes and basically says, hey, I'm full, but I've radioed another bus. They're gonna come and stop and pick you guys up. And so like several minutes later, this bus stops and then opens its doors, and we get on the bus, and then the bus driver's like, you have to get off, we're full.
Let us get on, and then told us to get off.
Yes. Why did you even stop?
I just stopped. And then the next bus did the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the other buses, the ones after that, were stopping, and they were saying, they weren't even letting us get on, they were just stopping to let us know that they were full.
Yeah.
So we finally just decided to walk back.
Yeah. And I remember like you were in so much pain.
I was. I have a knee that bothers me every once in a while, and it hadn't in a long time, so I was shocked. Looking back, I guess we were 10 miles in after a really steep hike. It wasn't that surprising.
Yeah.
But
I remember we were so glad to get back to the car.
It hurt. I mean, I was fine the next day after I was off of it for a while, but that last mile, it was flat, but I was in tears.
And the next day we packed up and came home, but we stopped at the Petrified Forest.
Yes.
And did a quick 2-hour tour. Again, another place that you could spend a lot of time at. It was absolutely beautiful.
I personally didn't think it was, like, I wouldn't spend much more time there. I think TJ liked it more than I did, but that's okay. Oh, we stopped and saw the Breaking Bad house.
But then we got to Amarillo and stopped at Alderaa Canyon State Park. We didn't go down in it. We stopped at a campground that's on the rim of the canyon and set up our tent at night. It was pitch black dark again.
And that was the moment we decided we are for sure getting a camper van. We had talked about it before then. We had kind of dreamed about it. And
we pulled in and began setting up our tent, and there was this camper van. And it was very evident that they had just pulled straight in and gone to sleep.
And we had to set up, and then we had to get up early to take everything down to get on the road by a reasonable time, which we're used to that. But at that point, being that exhausted and then realizing, like, if we had a camper van, we'd already camped in Texas.
We'd already camped
at that campground.
Yeah.
And we just realized, like, in these situations, we could have just pulled in, we could have gotten more sleep, we could have taken a shower. We hadn't showered in 6 days at that point.
So that's when we decided to do the camper van route. And you know, you guys know the story. We got hooked up with Ozark Mountain Adventure Vans, and they're building our camper van, and it should be done very, very soon, hopefully.
Yes, yeah, so that was really, really fun. After that, we ended up camping in Arkansas again in April, which was really neat. Whitewater RV in Mountain View was so kind, and they were a great campground. Like, that was really, really nice campground. And that campground had laundry services. Like, you could do your laundry there, which was cool. Hadn't seen that. Then the next state was Missouri.
Yes.
By this point, we had our camper van. We had moved out of our house. We'd sold so many things.
Well, like, we had a passenger van. It wasn't our camper van
That's
yet.
true. TJ had flown to New York to get this van and drive it home. So we drove it to Springfield. Oh, and this is, like, on this trip, is one of the reasons we went in a camper van. We were playing Dodge the Storms in southern Missouri that night. And so we were like, had a place to camp, and then we had to find somewhere else, move around. It was nuts.
Yeah, so we bought this van, and I drove it down from New York City, which driving that van through New York City, like, I had never been so, like, white-knuckled before.
TJ had never been to New York City either.
Never. And I just remember my dad was riding with me, and I missed my turn right on the road, and so me logically thinking I'll just take the next right, like, no big deal. And I took the next right, and then the road narrowed, and, like, it was this alley, and, like, they had, like, lights strung across the alley, and, like, they were not much taller than our van. And I just remember thinking, like, what did I do? Like, I'm driving this massive van through this alley, and I'm gonna hit somebody's car, or I'm gonna, like, hopefully the alley, like, had an end to it, and you know, I didn't get all the way down the alley and then had to back all the way out. And then I got back onto the main road, and we got through New York City and then drove back. I just remember thinking, wow, that was crazy. And so I gutted out the seats and the paneling on the inside, tried to do as much as I could to get Ozark Mountain a head start, even though they probably could have done that faster than I could.
Yeah.
And that way, when we dropped it off in Missouri, we could stand in it and talk about what we wanted and you know, all that stuff. And I was excited.
It was really fun. Missouri was a quick trip. We randomly stopped. We saw a billboard for the world's largest rocking chair.
The world's largest rocking chair, and so we had to exit.
Which turns out it's not anymore. It was when it was built. We randomly stopped and saw that. That was cool. And we spent some time in St. Louis with some great coffee, the best coffee ever.
It makes me warm inside.
TJ, you're sitting on an ant thing.
Do you have ants on me?
You did, that's what I brushed off of you earlier. You don't now, I don't see them, but like there's several ants here. Alrighty, this video has turned out to be harder to make than we thought, but that's okay.
By the way, if you've made it to this point in our video, thanks for watching this whole time.
Yeah.
This is a long one, we know, but...
Comment below if there's anything we said that you're like, I had no idea that happened, or I'm surprised, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Missouri again. We were not in Missouri for very long. We had the best coffee. We went to the Arch, which was really fun. St. Louis is just one of my favorite cities. I could spend a lot of time there. It was just a great trip. It was quick, but it was fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
And then we went to Kentucky.
We did, and man, Kentucky was, other than Arizona, was really one of the first times that we got out of the states that we have already been to, like
together.
Yes, well, together, but also like most of the states that we'd already gone to, I had been to all of those. Not necessarily the things we did, but like I'd been to all of them at some point growing up, most of them multiple times. And so when we got to Kentucky, I was like, I've driven through a tiny little part of Kentucky before, but I've never been to Kentucky. And
Kentucky's another state that's very diverse. So like the first night we stayed in like the country part of Kentucky.
Yeah, a lot like Mississippi.
Cornfields and stuff like that. And then the second night was more towards Louisville, which Louisville's more like a modern, urban city. And
Louisville is so fun.
Yeah.
We like watched the orchestra, a really good orchestra by the way, for free on the river.
Walked across the river to Indiana.
Yeah. Everybody was really kind to us. We had a great time at the Logan Street Market.
Saw where they make Jim Beam.
Yeah. It was just, man, it was a good time. And we slept through a fireworks show in our tent.
Yeah, we were so tired.
It was 4th of July weekend. We learned that the fireworks on 4th of July in Louisville are not as impressive as the fireworks that they do around Derby time.
But it's still impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
So
it'd be interesting to see Derby fireworks.
So cool. It was a really, really neat, just a cool trip.
And then we went to Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska. Oh my word.
We went to
Alaska.
We went to Alaska because Mary Catherine's cousins, Adam and Cammie, were getting married, and they invited us to the wedding.
Well, they're not cousins to each other.
Mary Catherine's cousin Adam was getting married to Cammie, who's not related to Adam. And so they invited us to the wedding, and we just thought we're gonna go to Alaska anyway at some point. We might as well go when we can go see their wedding and be there to support them.
Yeah. And it was like a great time weather-wise because it wasn't cold, but it wasn't hot. I don't think it ever gets hot there, but
no. I would have loved to have gone in October where you can see the Northern Lights, just because that's a very Alaskan thing. And I think I would have been okay with some snow.
Yeah, I think we would have camped in the snow just fine. But I don't know, we would have driven in the snow. But Alaska was our favorite state. It went nothing as planned.
Yeah.
TJ had COVID.
I had COVID the whole time.
And he didn't know it.
I didn't know it.
That's a whole ordeal. And then I had COVID when we got back. Right now, don't have any words.
Yeah.
Our videos don't do it justice. So, I want to redo.
Yeah, I want to redo just because I don't really remember much of it. Just because I was like sick, but just to like experience that again would be incredible. First of all, it was our first camper van experience.
Yes, and it was the first time that we flew with camping gear. 10 out of 10 recommend the camper van or some sort of RV that you can also rent camping equipment with, because if we had to fly with all of our camping gear, we would have been paying a lot of money in extra bags.
Yeah, and flying with camping gear wasn't that bad.
It really wasn't.
The way we had it organized, maybe we'll do a video on it in the future of how we had everything organized, but the fact that we were able to have a camper van that was stocked with camping gear made it 10 times easier.
It really did. I feel like a lot of states we go to, I'm like, oh my gosh, the people are so kind. And it's true. One of my favorite things about traveling the country over the past year has been that
you meet all sorts of really nice people.
You meet all sorts of people. People that are completely different from other people across states away, but they're all really, really kind. And especially like right now in history with like the news just making it seem like everyone's lost their mind. That's not really true. Like the overwhelming majority of people are just really awesome. And so that's been really great to know. However, I will say that the people in Alaska get the award for being the nicest.
So
by far.
we partnered up with Mahays Jet Boat Tours and took a jet boat tour into the wilderness, which was beautiful because it's just different from driving on the road. We did a ton of driving in Alaska, and being able to experience it from the water was a completely different perspective. That
it really was.
Really enjoyed.
Yeah, and we got to learn a lot about the wilderness. So they would chew the wood, and then when they chewed it all the way, this would fall on top of them. And they'd have a beaver. The different plants, the different animals, which was really cool because obviously we're out camping in that, and we didn't get that experience in other states.
And then camping in Denali National Park was another incredible experience. Just seeing the mountains. First of all, the whole time we were there, we never saw Denali.
We never did. However,
the weather was overcast and cloudy the whole time,
yeah.
And so we never really got a glimpse of the peak.
However, we had been out to the Grand Canyon and been through those mountains. At the end of May, I spent some time in Colorado with some family, and we had obviously been to the Smokies to start off our 50 states tour, and the Alaska range puts everything else to shame.
After that, we did the glacier cruise.
But we are actually on a 26 glacier cruise today. Probably my favorite thing we've done on the 50 states tour so far.
Yes, I think so too. It was just so pretty and unlike anything we had ever seen before.
And we won't be able to do that in any other US state.
No.
It's crazy because after a while it's kind of nuts how, like, I don't know how the boat captain knows which glacier is which one because they all look a lot alike.
Yeah.
But it never gets old.
Yeah.
And it went by so fast.
It did.
And we spent like the whole day on the boat.
And then we learned something about ourselves, about flying and traveling, and that's make sure that we don't plan overnight flight travel when we've spent all day being active. Because
we got up at like 6:30 that day to go on the glacier tour. We went to bed late the night before after the wedding, then we got up early, went on the glacier tour, spent all day doing that, and then we didn't go to bed. Our flight left at 2:30 a.m. so we went to the airport at midnight.
By then, I think she was probably starting to feel symptoms of COVID.
Yeah.
I was still getting over mine. And then we boarded the plane and they had mechanical issues. And so we got off the plane, sat in the airport for a while, got on another plane, working through all of that for a full day of travel. It took us all day to get back to Little Rock. We just know next time we're either gonna pay a little bit more for less stops on our way and during a more
like reasonable time to fly.
Yeah. Or we're just gonna sleep the day before if we've got night flights. So.
Yeah. I don't regret doing the glacier tour at all. Like I said, it's my favorite thing that we've done on the 50 states tour so far. All factors included, even if we weren't sick, it was really hard on us and we had no idea at the time. I thought my nose was running because I had this mask on the whole time, and I'd been out in the cold at the glacier tour, and so my nose started running then. I thought that was the problem. And then it didn't get better when we got home.
Yeah, and if you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, they're so irresponsible for flying with COVID or for traveling or being around family with COVID.
Yeah.
There was really no way that we knew we had COVID. And usually when we fly, and we're pretty self-aware, like when we're flying and travel, like usually when we fly, we have congestion, you know, and stuff like that. And that's really all I had for a while. And so there was no way for us to know that we had COVID.
We didn't have major COVID symptoms and feel really, really bad until we got home, which I'm thankful for that. But at the same time, it just stinks that like we did all of that at all, having any symptoms. It felt like a regular, I mean, I've flown overnight before and it felt just like every time I've done that, being really tired in a small space, being a bit congested. But it wasn't until about 4 days after we got home that we weren't tasting everything and that sort of stuff. So, and honestly, after I got home and I slept for like 12 hours, I did feel better for a couple days before I started feeling really bad again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our year.
Yeah, and that's why we honestly, I mean, that considered with like we don't have the van yet and we don't know when we're getting it exactly is why we don't know what the next trip is.
Yeah, we don't know where we're going next. I think once we get the van, we kind of have two plans made.
Yeah.
You know, one with the van and one without the van. And so you'll just have to stay tuned and subscribe to find out what's next.
Yeah, however, we are really excited to show off some places closer to home that we haven't shown you before. Some of our favorite camping is right around here where we live, so we are pumped to be featuring those because we think you'll love them too.
Thank you for hanging in there for so long for this video. We know it's a long one. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned some stuff maybe that you didn't know.
Yeah, I got more like just a overall glimpse of what our life has been on this journey so far.
Off camera.
Right, and we appreciate you subscribing, commenting, sharing our stuff, messaging us on Instagram. Like, we love it so much. We've made a lot of new friends. Some of you haven't even got to meet in person yet, but that's been the best part of the 50 States Tour, is the people that we get to meet.
We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.